maternity leave in there. So, but I also recently bought that time back. So here we are.
Charlie, did we go live?
No.
Oh, it looks like we are on the
Yes.
YouTube.
Can you hear me?
Okay. We still just have three of us, Zach?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Just a heads up, it does look like we are live on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Zach, do you know who's missing?
Uh,
Yeah.
Kim Joan and Irma.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. You said Dr. Lewis is trying to get in, Mr. Hands.
Yes.
Okay. That'll give us a quorum once she gets here. So let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Education Policy Committee meeting of the Maryland State Board of Education. This evening, we have information on the ELA and math standards that are coming up for adoption soon. We have some social studies standards and also some COMAR items related to library media services, the induction regulations, and incorporation by reference. So we're going to go ahead and get started today with the ELA standards. So I'd like to welcome Elise Brown and Stephanie Dale for presentations. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair McCusker, members of the Education Policy Committee. I want to start by thanking you for taking time to discuss the standards and frameworks revision process undergone by our literacy, our math, and our social studies teams. This evening, we're bringing three items to you. The first is going to be an informational item on the progress of the revised ELA standards and next steps towards approval. So at this time, I would like to introduce Stephanie Dale, a literacy coordinator on our team who oversaw the Standards Framework Validation Committee process and proposed revisions. So I'm going to share my screen. And Stephanie, if everyone can see my screen, then the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. So I am Stephanie Dale, and I am representing our literacy branch at MSTE in our Office of Teaching and Learning. Today, what I'd like to share with you are where we are in our standards and frameworks work for literacy. The first thing that I'm going to do is share with you our focus, our foci, really, there are three, and just to level set and give us kind of our purpose. Next, I'm going to share with you a new structure for the frameworks. And finally, I will share with you the next steps based on the initial recommendations from the public comments. So here you see our foci, our three focus, our three goals for literacy center around ease of use, validity, and clarity. With these 3 areas, we developed guiding questions, which you see on your slide. And I'm just going to go through them briefly so that you have some reference, and then talk a little bit about the action steps that we took based on the guiding questions. So first, we're going to look at ease of use. So our question was, how are we going to streamline our standards and organize them in a way that all of our end users can access, navigate, and use the standards with ease? And that was our ease of use. So you should be able to see evidence of this work through the streamlined structure that combine all of the documents that are separate in the ELA standards as they are, and put them into one document, one easy to use document. So that's one big change that we think will really help with ease of use. We also created an at a glance launch pad that names at least the K-12 literacy and ELA standards for K-12, as well as the 612 standards for literacy standards that relate to history, social studies, science, and technical subjects. I will share that with you shortly. So our next focus was validity. So how are we going to continue to ensure that our standards are aligned to both national standards and also the expectations that Maryland has, and including the legislation, our pre-K through 3 policy, and our resolution. You will see evidence of our validity work you have a folder called ELA progressions, and that was kind of how we did our crosswork, so our crosswalk. In those documents, and they're just the grade level progressions for each strand of our standards. Sorry about that. In your folder, you will see each strand that has all of the grade level standards for the strand for kindergarten through grade 12. So what we did was the anchor standards that you see have not changed at all, because those are our national standards and they should not change. We did take a look at the grade level standards per strand to ensure not only validity, but also clarity of language. We used the highlighting tool if there was any place where we added language in the grade level standards. We used the strike through tool anytime that there was language that we wanted to take away. And then we bolded any language that was different from the previous grade, which will enable our teachers to see most of the times with those bolded pieces, that is where the rigor changes. And then we also, so the bolded words will stay on the final documents. Obviously the cross through and the highlights will not be there, but if you want to take a look at that for your reference, you have access to that. So our third focus was clarity. And the guiding question was, how can we ensure that our ELA literacy learning outcomes are clear, measurable, rigorous, with logical progressions through the grade levels and high expectations for all students? You will see evidence of this work through our grade-specific standards that we have looked at and revised. With a new structure in place, our end users can access the standards by strand, and then be able to see, to drill down to their actual grade level standards, and we'll also be able to see the standards before and the standards after in one document. We also made sure that we removed any redundant language, and that was also for clarity and ease of use. Okay, so this is what we're calling our launch pad. Right now is a diagram, and we are working with our web team to make this diagram, or at least pieces of this diagram, clickable. So that, again, this goes to our ease of use and clarity. So if you take a look at this will be on the website. You see that the top section encompasses all the K through 5 literacy standards. And in those literacy standards, embedded are the literacy standards for science and social studies, and more topics, less technical subjects in K-5, but technical subjects in grades 6 through 12. On the bottom, you will see that the 6 through 12 English language arts standards are on the left, and then they do separate them out in grades 6 through 12. So you will see additional standards that have more of that specific language around science and social studies topics and technical subjects, because that's more appropriate for our learners in grades 6 through 12. So that's the difference between the pre-K 5 or the K 5 and the 6-12 standards and how they're organized. You will see that, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Brown, you're back one more time in the diagram. Yep. So what will happen is the tan or yellow, depending on how your computer looks, that should say the grade specific standards. Each one of those will be a live button that teachers can click. Once they click that button, they will have access to all of the grade levels pre-K through 12. They can go right to their grade level. And then we have tables in our grade level standards so that you look at them in columns, and the middle would be the grade level that they're looking at, but then they also will have access to the grade before and the grade after with those bolded words whenever language changes in the standards for each strand. So for each reading, informational and literature and writing, speaking and listening and language in all of our grade levels. And again, this was done for ease of use and for clarity. Okay, Dr. Brown. Thank you. And so pre-K and foundational skills, I'm sure that you have been accessing the comments. We got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people commented about the ease of use. They thought it was really user-friendly for our teachers and our parents and our families. Much of the feedback we received was about adding those pre-K and foundational skills back in, which we're not surprised about. So based on our reflection of this feedback, we were thinking initially about making more of a separate, more of a companion type of document, but honestly, based on your the public comments and our initial goal of having ease of use and clarity, we are going to not have something different because that's what we're trying to avoid. And we're already in the process of adding in those pre-K standards to ensure that there's alignment to the K standards and beyond. And we will also include all of those foundational skills. So the next pieces or the next documents that this committee will see will have samples of that in the document so that you can actually see what that's going to look like for the foundational skills and for pre-K. Okay, I think Dr. Brown, this is the place where we want to open up for questions and any other feedback that you would like to give our literacy branch to work on before we meet again.
Thank you. If we could take down the charts so I could see. Thank you very much. Dr. Lewis?
Thank you. First of all, I want to commend on the thoroughness of the review and especially the thoughtfulness put around the public comments. I read the public comments with bated breath because I wanted to see exactly where people had concerns. And I feel that the team and the group working on the standards really took into consideration the public comments and 9 out of 10 times addressed the issue and understood that those comments ultimately would make the document better in the end game. There were 2 comments on multilingual education. It was comment number 9 and number 14 out of the 36 comments. And I'm wondering if you could maybe go into a little detail and what is going to move forward there. Comment number 9.
Yes. Yes. So what I can offer around English multilingual learners and education is that the standards are the standards. And I think what it really comes down to is that we give our districts the standards and then they can decide based on their population and that population's needs, how they want to address that. The other piece is I'm sure you all know that we are getting ready to release an MTSS document. And I think that's going to really help us drill down to exactly what all of our MLs need, and then specifically, you know, differentiate between who is struggling and who can continue to move on. So I think those are the ways that we will address our MLs.
And can I ask one more thing, Chair McCusker? Is she there? Well, I'm gonna ask. On comment 11, in the last paragraph, the person talked about acknowledging specific language to third grade, and some of the revised standards had a large volume of detailed expectations. And the comment back was, I just want to make sure I understand it,
Mhm.
was this language is already in the existed standards. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, you are. Yes, we
Okay,
went
I
back
just
and
wanted
checked,
to-
and
I
and they
just wanted
were
to
in
make
the
sure that that's what you meant.
yes, ma'am. That they are in the existing standards already.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. Wow. Okay. Okay, well then we are able to move on if there are no more questions from the team. I would like to echo Dr. Lewis's sentiment on the responsiveness and thoroughness in public comment. It it only serves to make things stronger and also help educators feel like they've had a part in the process and therefore they buy in. I think, you know, a
Absolutely.
little more strongly. So thank you very much. It's excellent work.
Thank you.
Okay, then I guess we'll move on then to our math standards. And again, we have Dr. Brown, but this time we also have Lindsay Brightful. So I will turn it over to you, ladies. Thank you.
I will be here a lot for the next 3 items. So Lindsay has another information only topic, which will provide the update on the math standards. Lindsay, do you want me to share or would you like to share your screen?
You can share. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. You see everything?
Yep, good to go. Thank you. Good or happy early evening, end of school year. Thank you for having us. I'm excited. We had some months off from meeting with each other, so glad to be back. I'm going to just do a high-level overview of the revision process and share what our focus was for this revision process. And then we received over 350 comments, so our feedback looks a little bit different in that we didn't want you to have to read 350 it was 368, but we did read them, and we also took them to our standards committee. And so we did some high-level grouping, and we'll talk through the feedback and responses. And then we will also talk about next steps for implementation support, as we know that this is a portion or contributes to our overall implementation of our recently adopted math policy. And go to the next slide. So just starting off with the timeline of the revision process, we opened the applications for our Mathematics Standards Framework and Validation Committee, received about 60 applicants and were charged to narrow down to 12 representatives of our state, including parents. We had a parent representative, community representative, teachers, school administrator, math coach, and 2 district leaders from a math office and 2 district leaders from other offices. And so we met twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month, 3 times all day in person since September. So I wanted to take this opportunity and whenever I can to just express extreme gratitude for our committee. This is a truly dedicated group of individuals that was just grounded in improving student learning experiences in mathematics and student outcomes in mathematics. And we worked this group and they worked us back, but it was a very good experience. But I'm really appreciative because they were in the classroom in schools also during their day-to-day job and then meeting with us in the evenings. We also wanted to, it was very important to us to engage our math supervisors before we went into public comment. So we did have two in-person collaboratives where we brought drafts of the standards for their feedback and also gave them a chance to review feedback and provide some written feedback so that they can be a part of the process, as we know that it impacts their daily work. And we also know that this was very connected to our launch year's task force recommendation to shift from Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 to Integrated Algebra 1 and Integrated Algebra 2. So we did collaborate on the Integrated Algebra standards, both 1 and 2, with our launch year task force and other national experts that we had access to through the Dana Center and other avenues. And so that brought us to May, our official revised standards, which were presented in a crosswalk form. There were some significant changes, especially in secondary, and then some overall wording changes. So we did think it was important for the public feedback and moving forward to present the standards in a format where everyone could very clearly see standard by standard what changed and be able to understand a little bit of rationale of if there was change, why or where the content went. And that brings us to today. And we can move to the next slide. So overall, our standard revision focus, I do want to highlight that we do not have any record of math standard revisions since the adoption of Common Core standards in 2010. So we're talking about a 15-year period where a lot has changed in the world. And so we really know there could be a potential of a lot of shifts in our standards, but we wanted to have a focus area. And so as we engaged on the process, also bringing in other math leaders to think about what our focus areas were, these were the 3 major shifts we landed on. The revisions to the pre-K through grade 5 standards really wanted to clarify expectations and emphasize specific strategies and representations to strengthen foundational numeracy skills. And really, we saw the word fluency in our standards a lot in the Common Core standards, and we really wanted to deep dive into what does that mean and how are we very clear about expectations around estimation and the use of benchmark numbers, including fractions and decimals, to help students develop reasoning and decide when specific strategies will be more efficient. So that is called out much more explicitly in the revised standards. In middle school, we really wanted to, again, clarify expectations and really focus middle school fluency on foundational algebraic manipulation skills and make sure there was a more cohesive geometry experience across the middle grades, which would build a stronger foundation for the integrated algebra experience and have more deeper student engagement with essential algebra readiness concepts, especially in 7 and 8. We also saw that, or we see that in our current standards, there was a really big segment between grade 5 and grade 6, a lot of content gaps, and it was clear that the writers, well, we assumed that the writers were different from middle school than elementary. So in our committee, we had subcommittees of pre-K 6, 7 through integrated algebra 2. And then we had a third clarity and coherence subcommittee who specifically focused on the transition years and making sure that there was coherence across grade levels. And then our high school math standards reflect the shift to an integrated algebra sequence with 2 full-year courses, intentionally integrating algebra, geometry, and statistics. In the revised standards, we really wanted to support deeper conceptual understanding and really identifying essential, widely applicable math concepts. Really, there are a lot of standards in the current Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 course that are in both courses, and there wasn't clarity around what to cover in Algebra 1 and what to cover in Algebra 2. So we made that clear in the revised standards. And again, whenever we had the opportunity to emphasize reasoning, modeling, and problem solving directly in the standard, we weave that in And we believe that the standards are written to be a foundational progression of college and career readiness mathematically, so that students who engage and master the Integrated Algebra 1 and Integrated Algebra 2 standards are equipped to successfully enter and engage with the content in any secondary math pathway. And the committee also, after we were all done, we went back and took additional time to think about the progression and content of data and statistics across all grade levels. This is an area that was particularly weaker in early elementary. And so we used the resource from Data Science for All to really think about where do we need students to start if they're really going to engage in statistics in high school, and thinking about our current society and the information age, what are the key skills that we need every student to know? So those have been updated throughout the entire progression. Next slide. So I'm going to just high level this. You have this broken down a little bit more in the public comment overview and response document. But we had of the feedback received of 368, some just wrote comments and others responded to the question of if they support with changes or oppose the revised standards. So that was 242 respondents, and 40% indicated that they did support, and they shared a lot of appreciation around clarity, coherence. They called out the grade to grade connections. In early grades, they appreciated the inclusion of counting backwards and subitizing and patterns, which were some concepts that we added to pre-K and K. They expressed appreciation for the explicit emphasis on fluency, estimation, benchmark, numbers, and reasoning. Some respondents who supported mentioned that they see the clear integration and the algebraic focus for middle school leading into the Integrated Algebra 1, and they appreciated the separation of linear and exponential functions and quadratic functions. There were several who expressed appreciation for the data and statistics progression, and they even shared they want to make sure that that's reflected in our assessment so that it will really be taught. And then there was appreciation, and there was a mixed review on the changes of the coding, which I will talk a little bit about more in a second. But I also just want to call out the appreciation for appropriate balance of procedural fluency and conceptual understanding, and the language used in the standard to make it clear of what was expected around either fluency and or conceptual understanding. We can go to the next slide. So 43%, as listed here, indicated support with revised standards, and these I will share again appreciation for the feedback, because some got really detailed and went to specific words. What does this mean? Why not say this? And some of it helps us to know where to target our professional learning. But some we did take back to the committee and say, is this what we meant? Do we want to word it like this? So it's very helpful to have that thought process and to go back and think through all the decisions made. One of the final conversations with our committee was about changing the standard coding. So what we ran into with if we kept the previous coding is that in instances where we took a standard that we felt needed to be broken into two standards, and if we kept the coding, it was potential that the coding for our standards would not match. So if we had RP 2.1, or this ratio of proportions, so it'll be a sixth grade 6.1, and we broke it into two standards. So now we have a 6.1 and 6.2, but if someone goes to look it up, it won't match the Common Core standards. Also, if we added standards, it was a potential not to match, or if they shifted grade level, we're not going to put out, we moved some of the 7th grade to 8th, or some of the 8th to 7th, and we know it's important for that grade level to match the standard. So in that led us with the agreement of the committee that we needed to change the standard coding. The standard coding also previously elementary, middle, and high school had different codes. And so that was an area that was not coherent, that is now coherent in the revised standards. It will also align to the core standards that are called out in the numeracy development framework. So there was apprehension, there was both mixed reviews on the change to standard coding, but we did make that decision with the rationale shared. In the current standards, some of the standards have examples and number limits and some do not. And so we made the choice to be consistent with the removal of examples unless absolutely needed from standards. This was for a couple of reasons. The first is that in standards that had examples, we know that those examples have been over time overemphasized in classrooms, even if they're not overemphasized in curriculums. And so we want to make sure that there isn't one specific strategy or example of a problem type or concept that is taught and leaving off the others. And so we didn't want any specific examples to be called out in the standard. For number limits, when students are developing their foundational number skills, we purposely included number limits. And then after they are developed, and we're talking about other numerical operation skills, we have less number limits. We do intend to have number limits for all standards in our companion guides and examples for all standards in our companion guides. And I'll give a little bit more detail about those guides towards the end. And as I mentioned before, the other support with changes was very standard to standard feedback, standard by standard feedback around wording. In some cases, we made like a business rule around when to have substandards because we were unclear about when substandards existed. So there was some confusion or questions about when are we, why we have substandards or when we don't. So we address the consistency there. There was some questions about decomposing numbers into 3 add-ins in kindergarten. And so all of these have responses in the document, which I can go through, but really just my overall thing is that we did read every comment and we did take it into account, either something we had previously discussed or something that we needed to bring back to our committee to make sure it was addressed. Some of this feedback also goes into this, some who supported with changes match those who opposed. And so 17% opposed the revised standards. I think it's important to note that of these 41 respondents, almost half, 17 of them, didn't particularly oppose the revised standards, but they just opposed that we're revising the standards at all. So they just said that they don't want to do it because it's going to be hard, or they don't agree with what MSDE is doing, or they don't think changing the standards will improve math outcomes. So there wasn't specific feedback to standards, but just that they don't want revised standards. And so we know that in order for this to be successful, it would take everyone. And so that's our future work, to engage with those who don't want to go through revisions and talk about the importance of updates. We should have likely updated before now, but we will make it a regular process moving forward, but also to make sure there are resources available for implementation support so that they can ease some of their nervousness around not having the resources. That goes also into the curricular alignment, and we know that curriculums that are currently adopted are aligned to our current standards. And so we want to, and we have been very clear that it is not the role of teachers to have to develop materials to implement revised standards. It is the role of us working with LEA leaders to develop system-wide resources that are aligned to the HQIM they already have adopted and are implementing. And we will follow through on that. That also is why we have the timeline of rollout where we want to adopt now, and we still have a year to get resources together for pre-K to 8, and then 2 years for integrated algebra 1 and 3 years for integrated algebra 2. So we have that time up front to do the learning before implementation. And the last big bucket of those who are opposed, I won't even say big bucket, but bucket, are just, I think there's still a lack of clarity around how we are shifting from Algebra 1 geometry to Algebra 2, shifting from Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 to integrated Algebra 1 and integrated Algebra 2. And we want to keep emphasizing this is not taking 3 or 3.5 courses and putting it into 2. It is very thoughtfully thinking about the core mathematical ideas that need to narrow the focus of the most relevant and applicable content that all students need to know for any pathway. Previous or in the current standards, Algebra 1 has 40 standards, Algebra 2, 38, and Geometry 36. Both Integrated Algebra 1 and Integrated Algebra 2 have 30 standards. There are some instances, as I mentioned, where standards repeated in Integrated Algebra 1 and Integrated Algebra 2, and that does not exist. But it also, and there are some standards that were combined or put together meaningfully. So I don't want it to be like we cut that much content, but all of this was done with intention. And there were specific comments about some of the content removed, such as trigonometric functions. Trigonometric functions were removed, but trigonometric ratios are included in Integrated Algebra 2. And this is a foundational skill that all students would need to move forward, and those who need trig functions will be able to get it in the course in their secondary math pathway. We also know that trigonometric functions were not tested and were not often covered. And so we don't want stuff to be in there just to be in there. We want it to be a meaningful experience. There were also some comments about logarithms and asymptotes. And so logarithms were added, will be added back in a way where they are identified as the inverse of exponential functions. So we hear the feedback around that and think there is a natural place for them and intend to make that update. And asymptotes also are a key function characteristic that we can include when we think about exponential functions. So again, hearing that feedback and putting it, making sure that it is included in the upgraded Integrated Algebra 2 standards. Also want to call out that the Integrated Algebra 2 standards, we made sure that all the content was covered for students to be prepared for AP Pre-Calculus based on the AP Pre-Calculus prerequisite skills by the College Board. And they identify which skills need to be mastered and which skills need to be exposed. And so some of those skills that they identify exposure for, we were able to remove some of the content to make sure it's exposed, but not go as deep as it previously went, because all students would not need that prior to the course. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit. I know we're information, but there is a lot that we know we have to do moving forward once adopted. I mentioned before the crosswalk documents. So right now, the most often instructional resource student that teachers or instructional leaders use with our standards are evidence statements documents, and those include lots of examples and number limits and some specifics about vocabulary. And those are really assessment documents. They were created to develop assessment items, and we don't want our instructors or educators to have to use an assessment document to understand standards. And so when adopted, we will, and we have a committee doing some pre-work, but we will create crosswalk documents for every standard. And I'm sorry, crosswalk documents will continue to help with the standard coding, where they can see what's the new coding and old coding and get Common Core resources. But we will create companion documents for each standard, which will be an instructional resource with more extensive examples, learning opportunities of what students should and should not engage in when learning the standards. We want to be explicit about some of these strategies we learn, like keep, change, flip, when learning dividing fractions, that we do not want to teach in that way. We want to be clear, make clear connections to modeling and reasoning and financial literacy. And so those will be in the companion documents. Additionally, as I mentioned before, we will form common curriculum communities with LEA math leaders to prepare for implementation with their already adopted curriculum material for grades K to 8. And also, once formally adopted, we'll be able to align our numeracy development framework with the standards and begin to recode and develop additional assessment items, and then move forward with the development of resources for integrated algebra implementation. And I think that's my last slide. So we'll move to any questions, comments, feedback. And I have my team here also, or sub-members. So if there's a specific question, they work with the subcommittees and I might pass it to them, but we'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee members? Dr. Lewis? You need to unmute there.
I know you're surprised I have comments.
What?
First of all, thank you for talking about the coding issue, because I was trying to crosswalk and I was deep on the struggle bus on that one. And so I'm glad that there's being an emphasis in developing a crosswalk. Another comment you made that I'm still concerned about is the amount of standards for the content. There were 114 standards in total for the 3 courses, and now we're to 60. So we almost lost close to 50% of the content standards. I heard you say that some were combined and sort of redeveloped, but I feel like I need a little bit more information on that. And then my third thing is on the public comment, at the point in time that we received it, you took 146 comments for people that supported and provided changes and opposed, and you condensed those into high level 24 comments. And you are correct that I might not want to read 368 public comments, but I feel like I lost some of the understanding that was happening in the public about the content standards by really condensing them to short, high-level comments. And part of what I liked about what social studies and language arts did, they really gave the detailed comments so I could really sort of get into the mind of the commenter. I had a difficult time with that with math. So if you could comment on, once again, on the ending up on 60 standards versus the original 114 and how they were condensed, and then taking all those comments and meshing them into 24 comments that were really high level, that would be helpful to me.
Yes, and I just want to share for the crosswalk piece and the standards piece. In the revised standards that are shared, and so I may have oversimplified some combinations. So for example, algebraic thinking, the very first standard, there are 4 previous standards that were rewritten and reworded and are covered now in one standard. So it's not just like 2 here, 2 there. There are some overarching big ideas that we combine into standards. And the crosswalk as presented shows every single standard that did exist and where it shows up in the current. So, but we can go deeper as needed. And I will troubleshoot and find a happy medium about every single comment and the summary.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Chang?
Yes, thank you, Chair McCusker. I have one comment about this trimming down, but I thought the standard with the standard be grade appropriate. Can we go from this question? And I might have kind of more in-depth question.
Can you repeat your question? I'm not sure.
The standard would be, say it is more grade appropriate standard, or it's just a general standard when you are trimming down from over 100 to 60 some.
Yeah, so that was for the high school course content standards. So Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, into Integrated Algebra 1, Integrated Algebra 2. When we get into high school content, we don't go by grades, we start to go by courses. And so what we found was that there were a lot of concepts that were covered in multiple standards in the current Common Core standards. And so we didn't want to repeat them standard by standard. We wanted to cover them in one standard, but they remain at the same level. So all of them are considered high school level courses, even though some students take them in middle school. We did separate linear and exponential and quadratics, and that is more how we differentiated between integrated algebra 1 and integrated algebra 2, but really leaning into being able to develop deeper understanding versus rushing through a lot of contents with all types of functions at once and not really understanding. So I don't know if I answered, but if not, we can follow up or let me know if you have a follow-up.
Yes, so with that being said, it is not very specific. It is just the development of the students' course or finish up the Algebra 1 or integrated course and in sequence, right? So is our goal to have high school students to finish the link courses because they need 4 years in high school, need to take some sort of math-related courses, right? So
Yeah.
besides those 3, they can take like statistics or some other kind of math-related courses to
Yes.
complete.
Yes. So our goal was one of the goals for the 2-year course is to have all students have authentic experience in a secondary math pathway with at least 2 courses, or to have experience in 2 different math pathways. And so that would allow them to take AP statistics or data science or quantitative reasoning, or it also opens up the opportunity for all students, even if they're not accelerated, to go into AP Pre-Calc and reach calculus by their senior year. So the 2-year experience really aligns to the blueprint goal of college and career readiness by the end of 10th grade. It also opens up and prepares all students for different avenues of math learning in their final 2 years of high school or earlier if they're accelerated.
Great, thank you. And then a link kind of question you mentioned about the financial literacy. How does it play in the scope of this math center?
Yes, so the current adopted financial literacy standards by the state are financial literacy application standards about saving, spending, thinking about how they think about money more in a life setting. And so we want to identify specific standards that overlay those financial literacy standards, and we'll make those connections in the companion guide. We did not want to add content to any grade level and then make more that has to be taught and assessed per grade level, but we do know that the connection is there authentically, and we want to call out explicitly where those connections can be. And we also, in the examples, will use financial literacy examples, and we'll also emphasize them in the assessment that they will be assessed with a financial context.
Yeah, so it's part of the standard but not separate course that would meet the fulfillment of the 4 years of math.
Yes, there is potential for applied advanced algebra financial literacy course as far as one of the secondary math course pathways. We need to convene, and we will convene another standards framework and revision committee for our secondary math pathway courses. That was not in the scope or the experience of this committee. And so we will need to bring together, and we had that laid out in the math policy timeline next year, an additional committee to look at courses beyond integrated algebra 2 and make sure that we have the right group that has the experience and expertise in that area. It's also something we've started preliminary work with our launch year's task force.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Michael?
All right. Thank you, Chair McCusker, and thank you for letting me join your committee meeting, even though I'm not a member. Just want to thank the team. Very excited about a lot of the shifts in this. I had the privilege of joining one of the standards review days with the team, and was just really impressed with the level of thought and detail that educators and stakeholders from across the state have been engaging in over the past year. These are big, there's a lot of significant shifts here, and it's been a lot of work. So I just want to congratulate you all in leading that process. I am super just excited about the relevance of the shifts that were highlighted. So I'm excited about the direction we're headed. My first is a question, and these are less specific about like the standards themselves and just from a process and alignment perspective. Can you talk a little bit, about how this relates to the launch year's task force, and what that alignment process? So we've been doing that course redesign work. How does that merge? How does that work from a process standpoint, merge with what we're seeing today in the process that we've gone through?
Yes, so the launch year task force and the overall Dana Center focus is modernizing high school math. And it really is a focus and charges us to think about what is the current course progression in high school math, and does it match our current society? So Dana Center, through launch years, released a set of recommendations around how states should be thinking about their high school math progression and preparation that from early grades that leads into that progression. And so we are one of many states who have recently revised their standards with this thought in mind, and really rethinking Algebra 2 and what it means for students, and what is the real foundational high school math content they need to be engaged in to be prepared for the next level of math. We work with many states who are also doing this work when we went through this revision, sharing our standards, looking at theirs, having some complex conversations about content and where it goes and why. And the biggest thing also is leading into those secondary math pathways and really emphasizing that while reaching calculus is great for some students, it is not the only advanced math. Their students have meaningful experiences in statistics and data science. Quantitative reasoning, as I mentioned, is an entry-level college course. And so we want to really broaden our definition of advanced math. And to do that, we have to make sure that we're emphasizing data and statistics, that we're emphasizing computer science application early on. And so that was a part of our work that we brought into this process. So that's a brief answer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say that the work that has led to this has been going on for 3 years or so, 2-3 years. So the standards review has been this year. Okay.
Yeah, we've had a task force. This is about year 3, and the first year was forming the task force, but it's been active for 2 years, and really engages both K-12 math leaders and university and community college math educators, math researchers, and those who teach those in math prep programs. So really bringing together the entire math community in Maryland around the standard revisions and what needs to be
Awesome.
in there. Mm-hmm.
You're leading into my second question. So you or Dr. Richardson, one of you will I think be able to nail this. But whenever I talk about our course redesign nationally, or with folks around the state, the first thing that people ask is, what does higher ed think about this? Where are community college partners? Because when you're touching that core Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 sequence that most states have, that we currently have, there's concern that if you touch it or move it, that you've now we're not aligned with where community colleges want students to be in terms of what's needed. Tell us about the process. How has higher ed been a part of this, and how are they feeling? Without speaking for them, but what feedback have you received as how you've designed this?
Yeah, so our main avenue with higher ed is our launch year's task force. Just if anyone is publicly interested, we have a link on our website that outlines what we have been covering over the last 2 years. And this includes representatives from community colleges, as I mentioned, from universities, and the University of Maryland system is the biggest system in our state, which is not just University of Maryland, but most of the universities. And so they have been a part of this work. And actually the revision of our standards and the revision of our course progression, it came from the recommendation of the task force. So this group, consisting of university and community college leaders, actually came together and made this recommendation, which informed our math policy and now our revised standards. So I would say they're not only on board, but they're leading the work, and they are already thinking and working with us on what are their current admission standards, which most already were aligned, but if there are any that they need to update, already proactively working on that, even though this won't impact graduates until 2031. They want to make sure that their admissions requirements are aligned to the shifts that we're making right now. I will also say that there's been very intense level of collaboration when we are meeting monthly, but we are talking probably weekly, and about all the intricacies of what this will mean, what will dual enrollment look like, what courses should be offered at high school, where should we push dual enrollment. They have pushed us to really develop quantitative reasoning as a high school course, which is not something that we currently have. They are pushing us around data science and expanding that course. And they are very involved in the conversation around calculus, both for those who are entering college with majors that will require calculus and those that will not, and what math students need in their 11th and 12th grade year. And it's all very fresh because we just had a task force meeting yesterday, and our conversation was around what are our pre-calculus standards as a state? Should it be AP? Should we make our own? And what are the implications of that? And really, what experience do we want students to have in high school that continues to develop their math identity in a positive way, so that they're not burnt out and can continue to meet their college level math courses with success, whether that's entry level courses, if their major doesn't require higher level courses, or if it is Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, how are they entering with the prerequisite and the math learning experience they need to be successful. So very involved, and we're excited to continue that work. And I know I talked a lot, so I don't know if Robert wanted to add anything, but.
Great. Well, let me say, when I had the chance to talk with some folks at Education Commission Estates on math, what we have here is rare in terms of just deep level collaboration, not just feedback, but like the level of collaboration with higher ed. This is the first obstacle that several other states identified when even thinking about how do we think differently and more in a more relevant way around secondary math. So just kudos to you and the team. It's a big deal. Last thing, thinking forward about the tools, two things that I'm anxious to see not brought to the board, but that are just on my mind as tools. One, the presentation here of math of the side-by-side is exactly what we need as a board right now. I am looking forward to seeing that coherent document so that we're seeing grade levels across. So we're seeing third, fourth, and fifth grade, or so we can see standards progressing that way. This is the way we need it right now. So I'm not asking for anything different now, but I'm looking forward to that coming. And then the other one, which is in our math policy, and I know will come out of this, and was in some of the comments, is a standalone document that gets more clear around the fluencies at each grade level. I'm thinking a lot about, you all know that I am a parent. I have a kindergartner right now. I'm thinking about what are the fluencies she needs to have right now at the end of kindergarten and in first grade, in second and in third, and how we can start translating so that parents and families and communities can be partners in really building out practice and supporting, and so that it's a little bit more clear about what some of these fluencies are. Future work, but just really excited about where we are at this point.
Thank you. And we'll continue to invite you and all of you out. Come engage. Let's have math days.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I do have a quick one. I had some direct feedback given to me from a few different places, most of which was covered in what is on the screen and you've put in there. But there was one thing that had been brought to me more than once, and I just want to make sure that we're going to somehow follow up on this. There seems to be concern about the requirement for 60 minutes of math time and this how that impacts scheduling in the middle schools and high schools. Are we going to provide guidance to LEA leaders in this scheduling arena so that they can kind of work that out? Or is that changing because it's not addressed anywhere in here?
Yeah, so the instructional minutes is addressed in the math policy, it's not
Right.
addressed in the math standards. It is a 27-28 implementation year for that. So we do have 2 school years to work through scheduling. We have started some of that work with some of our committees, and we also will be releasing some some example schedules in our upcoming guidance documents. And then we're going to need to work with LEAs one-on-one they're over half LEAs already meet the 60-minute requirements, but those who don't will need to work individual of how we can support with all of their contents meeting the requirements. So yeah, there's a lot of focus work there. I came today from a math supervisor meeting with all the supervisors across the state, and we had some sessions on where do we need to lean in, and they were LEA-led sessions. So LEA in 2 of the sessions, they already have 90-minute math classes. So they're saying how they do it and what it looks like across the day, and how they're using the time to do tier 1 and then also tier 2. So the discussions are happening, and we feel confident that everyone will feel prepared and ready by the implementation year. But we'll continue to bring updates.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm sure that that will help to answer some questions that came in my direction. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Going forward, over the next month or so, concerning the ELA and math standards, committee board members are going to be invited to provide additional feedback as we're preparing to move the standards for adoption to the full board next month at our July board meeting. I believe Dr. Michael has some more details on process on how members of the board are going to be providing that feedback so that we have an efficient process and we can move this forward in an efficient manner. Dr. Michael?
Yeah, you covered it. My goal and goal for the committee is to make sure that you are really comfortable this time next month when you meet. So working with staff, bringing any of those changes, if there are any, it doesn't sound like there are any flags from today, but as you're working through the standards, there are opportunities to have follow-up questions with staff members, et cetera. We'll have further discussion next month, but we are our intent is to have this brought to the full board at the July meeting. So I want to back into that.
Dr. Michael, any specifics on if board members want to bring specific feedback, where they should funnel that through?
I work with Zach, who will get that to Dr. Smith and Dr. Brown, and then if there's back and forth from there, we'll get that done. But just as we've done with the policies, there are going to be similar touch points, and then any of those, if there's things that need to be debated further or discussed, we'll do it at committee. Otherwise, there's potential for another revision that we'll look at in the July committee meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you for the feedback or the details there. Appreciate it. All right. So moving on, thank you very much.
You're on mute, Chair McCusker.
You would think at this point I'd be better at this. I apologize for being on mute. As I was trying to say, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. Moving forward, board members will consider this in July and at our next meeting. So we're going to move into social studies now. And this is an action item on the social studies standards. And I'll be inviting Dr. Brown again and Peter Ramsey to present. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
You again. Our final standards related item tonight is social studies. It is an action item. Like you said, we will be returning to the conversation that we had in March. And at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to Finn to kick us off. Finn, you want to share your own screen?
Okay,
Is that
I'll
correct?
share my screen. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Give me 1 second here. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. Good afternoon.
I don't have it up yet, Mr. Ramsey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second.
There we go.
Right, give me one here.
You're up. We can see it.
Okay, great. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. My name is Peter Phineas Ramsey. I'm the Director of Social Studies at the Maryland State Department of Education. And I very much appreciate this opportunity to speak with you, the Education Policy Committee, around the proposed revisions to the Maryland Social Studies frameworks. So today I'm going to walk through the proposed revisions by the numbers, kind of doing a deep dive at what the numbers say in regards to the proposed revisions. I'll then kind of walk through some of the major points of engagement that we've done throughout this process, and then we'll end with a request for approval. So to begin, I wanted to start with a snapshot of the proposed revisions. As you can see here, that this is not a wholesale rewrite of the social studies frameworks. Quite the contrary. The social studies SFEC approached this work with what we've come to call a scalpel approach. That is, the committee was intentional and precise in identifying what needed to be revised, and just as importantly, what needed to be left untouched. We recognize that Maryland's existing social studies frameworks are strong and widely respected nationally and within the state. And as such, the goal has been to enhance the frameworks by refining what works, clarifying where needed, and strengthening areas that required adjustment. And as a result of this work in grades 9 through 12, about 3% of the total objectives are being revised. In grades 6 through 8, approximately 7% have been adjusted or being proposed to be adjusted. And at the elementary level, about 9% of objectives are being revised, though it should be noted that many of these are structural in nature. These numbers reflect a deliberate effort to protect the integrity of the existing frameworks while making thoughtful improvements where necessary. These revisions reflect the contributions of a wide and representative group of stakeholders. The initial drafting and review of the process was led by the Social Studies Framework and Validation Committee, or the SFEC, I mentioned earlier. This committee unanimously approved the first iteration of the proposed changes in early December 2024. Importantly, the SFEC was made up of social studies supervisors and coordinators from across the state, and it also included parents and community leaders, which ensured that both instructional and civic perspectives were at the table. After this foundation was laid, we moved into deeper collaboration with district leaders and the broader public. This timeline shows how engagement was layered and sequenced across stakeholder groups. After the SFEC unanimously approved the initial set of proposed revisions in early December, we moved directly into a round of targeted engagement with local social studies supervisors and content coordinators. These instructional leaders were invited to respond to a structured feedback survey, which was administered in early December 2024, and their input resulted in a series of edits applied later that month and into early January 2025. Once the local feedback was incorporated, we launched a public comment period in February of 2025, opening the process to educators, families, advocates, and community members across the state. That feedback, much of it thoughtful and constructive, was reviewed in partnership with the SFEC and used to further refine the frameworks. The final and perhaps most in-depth layer of engagement took place just a month ago in May of 2025, when we convened 4 3-hour feedback workshops specifically designed for LEA social studies supervisors and coordinators. Immediately following the first 3 sessions, we hosted a debrief session to explain exactly how the final layer of feedback would be applied, closing the loop and reinforcing transparency in the process. Each round of feedback played a critical role in shaping the final product. The perspectives of educators, families, and community members led to meaningful refinements to the proposed revisions that improved clarity, instructional usability, and alignment. The result is a set of proposed framework revisions that reflect statewide expertise and the practical realities of classroom implementation. As I mentioned earlier, a key part of this engagement process took place just last month in May when we hosted our 4 in-depth 3-hour feedback sessions, specifically designed for LEA social studies supervisors and coordinators. These sessions added a total of 12 hours of structured conversation that went far beyond surface level review. 23 of 24 LEAs participated in these sessions. That's a remarkable level of engagement and speaks to the field's investment in getting this right. Following the workshops, we held a debrief session, as I mentioned before, to walk through how the feedback would be incorporated and ensuring transparency in the process. The final proposed revisions incorporated a majority of the feedback we received in these sessions, which ranged from clarifying language in objectives to removing previously proposed revisions and to fine-tuning how cross-disciplinary skills were supported. As a result of this broad and sustained engagement process, the final edits to the frameworks are focused, purposeful, and responsive to the needs of the field. These changes include clarified language to make objectives easier for educators to interpret and implement, updated examples that promote inclusivity, ensure historical accuracy, and reflect local relevance, and streamlined content to eliminate redundancy and improve alignment across grade levels. Today, we respectfully request that the Education Policy Committee recommend that the revised social studies frameworks be advanced to the full Maryland State Board of Education for a vote on adoption. This work represents a shared commitment to rigor, inclusivity, and civic readiness, and it has been shaped by the educators who teach and lead social studies across Maryland and refined through meaningful engagement with the public. We believe these revised frameworks will enhance instruction, empower teachers, and reflect the values and priorities of Maryland students, schools, and communities. Thank you for your time and your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was going to ask you to pull them down, and you did it without asking. Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. I appreciate it very much. I would like to say right off the bat that the responsiveness to feedback that I read in the accompanying documents I thought was excellent. And I appreciate the hard work that all the committees put together, because I know you have like 4 different groups, and the feedback they put together, and the way you presented it to us was very easy to read and to walk across. So thank you very much for that hard work. Do we have any questions or comments from other members of the committee? Dr. Lewis?
Sorry. One of the themes that ran through the public comment was the use of and/or. And I know the committee said they went back and they changed some of those. And I guess I'm just curious, how did you balance giving districts flexibility with the and or versus being specific of what you really wanted the and or when you really wanted the or? So can you talk about that process a little bit for me?
Sure, that's a great question. And one that we have, within the SFBC been discussing, at length since November, I would say. And really, to your point, Dr. Lewis, really trying to, we know we wanted to provide flexibility, and we also wanted to eliminate redundancy in places where there could be an ineffective use of language really in some of the objectives. And so it was really kind of going objective by objective and instance by instance, and trying to unpack where it made sense and where it didn't. And also really listening to the supervisors and coordinators. They're the closest to this work and the implementation. And we heard loud and clear that there was a concern that the inclusion of /or may tip the balance towards a narrowness that we didn't want to do. And so we heard them loud and clear, and we took virtually every instance of it out. There is one particular case in sixth grade that we did keep. And we had a long discussion with our supervisors and coordinators during that workshop session, and they understood our thought process and why we kept that one instance.
Thank you. I think that's helpful.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to entertain a motion for us to recommend to the broader board that we give permission to adopt these new standards. So moved
So
by,
moved.
so moved by Dr. Lewis,
Second by
Second.
Monica.
Dr.
Goldson.
Goldson. Committee members, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, passes unanimously, and we will send a recommendation to the board to give permission to adopt. Thank you so much for all your time, Mr. Ramsey and your team. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to now move on to our COMAR items, and we're going to start with COMAR 13A.05.04, Library Media Services. This is a permission to publish, and I welcome Ms. Elizabeth Cowles. I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Hello, it's actually Kimberly Coles.
Oh, okay. Thank
And
you.
I
I'm
prefer
sorry.
by Kim. Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Okay,
please.
Thank you. I think Dr. Brown is going to share her screen. So good evening, Chair McCusker and members of the Policy Committee, and thank you for your time as I present this repeal and replace updates for, as you said, COMAR, School Library and Media Programs. The last time this COMAR was updated was in 2008, and since then we've had the passing of HB 785, the Freedom to Read Act. So we have updated our COMAR standards to align with that, and also updated some of the standards to meet the changes, the current standards for today. So go ahead, Elise, or Dr. Brown. Okay. Yes, go ahead. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to be very concise. And so we added the first part, .01, we added some definitions. There's a lot of new language around multiliteracies now, not in the past. School library media programs focused on information literacy. And as you know, in the past few years, we've added digital literacy, media literacy, digital citizenship, now AI. And so I felt like we needed to add some definitions so that way everybody has a common language as to what these literacies mean and how we're going to focus on them. Thanks, Dr. Brown. Okay, so as you can see, the first part in section 2A, we just added those terms. I think it used to say information literacy. We added digital and media tools and technologies in addition to digital citizenship. In part 2.A.4, we wanted to remove the words personnel and support staff. We wanted to, let me get to my notes here, sorry. We wanted to ensure equitable access to our school library media instruction. And so we felt that it was essential to prioritize certified school library media specialists over paraprofessional support staff. As in 2024, the school library report, 29% of Maryland students did not receive instruction aligned with school library media standards. So we felt we needed to prioritize certified staff. And the last one, we added to participate in the selection of school library media materials. As you know, in the state of Maryland, there have been some local LEAs that have made it to the front page. And what we're finding is that some local Board of Eds are trying to remove or minimize the role of school library media specialists in the selection process and taking them out of that process. And school library media specialists have master's degrees. They're trained in selection tools, and I don't feel that we need to be removed from that process. Okay, thank you. 2.c.2b, I added that proposed language of including school library media personnel and curriculum development, implementation, and evaluation at each grade. This language was already in COMAR. I just added some specificity to it. The proposed language emphasizes integrating instructional design into the content curriculum and aligning the resource to content standards, which is something that we already do. This is to emphasize that the collaboration between school library media specialists and curriculum developers will allow school library media specialists to effectively apply their expertise in supporting the blueprint, especially in the acquisition of high quality instructional materials, because that's what we do. We look for high quality resources that will integrate with curriculum. Okay, thank you, Dr. Brown. Okay, so in this part, providing professional development services, this language already, COMAR already mandates that school library media specialists provide professional learning services. I just wanted to add some specificity to that and include some of the topics that we really need to focus on, not only with staff but with our students, things like copyright and privacy. Accessibility has been a very challenging topic this year that I would like to see us continue. Instructional technology and digital learning and digital citizenship. So I just really added those bullet points to highlight the types of professional development services that school libraries can provide. Thank you. Okay. So these two really came right from the Freedom to Read Act. So implementing procedures for the acquisition, organization, circulation, and removal of instructional materials and technologies. This came right out of the Freedom to Read Act, as you see there. And promoting instructional materials, technologies, and services that address the interest, information, and instructional support, again, came right from the Freedom to Read Act. And I felt like those were important enough to include word for word from the Freedom to Read Act. This one, providing personnel that include a certified school library media specialist at each school. This is in the existing COMAR already. I just added some language that language is retained, but I wanted to emphasize the importance of having a certified school library media specialist on site to ensure that students receive consistent and effective instruction. Okay, thanks, Dr. Brown. I think that one is a repeat. We can just skip that one. Thank you. Okay, these also align with the Freedom to Read Act. So beginning in October 1st of 2025, each LEA shall submit documents to MSDE every 2 years. And those documents include their selection policies and procedures that are consistent with the Freedom to Read Act and objection policies and procedures. They're very much intertwined. Having strong selection policies will help build what will help with the objection policies. If we have a good selection, we can explain that to the community and also have we want to be very transparent about our processes. And let me see if I have anything else there. Yeah, okay, accountability and yeah. The next one, yes, so these are, again, already in COMAR about collecting documentation. I just listed out some of the important documents that will show an alignment, that their curriculum, LEA curriculum, is in alignment with our Maryland standards for school library media, the Maryland digital learning standards, integrate with content curriculum with the scope and sequence, and includes technology. This is something that some LEAs are working on right now, and I'm working with them to help build these things in collaboration. They're working together to build curriculum and scope and sequence that meet these standards. Operational procedures. These operational procedures are critical for the successful administration of school library media programs and ensuring accountability and alignment with Maryland standards. So most school systems have all of these, and I think that's one of the things that we're going to ask for later for submission. So yeah, so these are mandated by the Freedom to Read Act. There are objection policies and procedures within the Freedom to Read Act. It asks that there's a review committee. They establish a uniform process that came right out of the Freedom to Read Act. They outlining the review process. They will have this policy posted on their website. It will align with the Freedom to Read Act. So it's very transparent. Anybody can go in and look at their policies. And then the periodic review of the Maryland Annual School Library Survey, which is, they've already been doing that for over 20 years, I believe. And then we added the biannual submission of school library media program implementation documents that we just spoke about. Now, the purpose of this document review is to offer guidance and professional learning and expertise to help support the continuous improvement of school library media programs in Maryland. I think that's it. So if there are any questions?
Thank you. I do have a quick follow-up question. Where you have provide personnel who include, and it says certified school library media personnel, etc. So what this is saying is that every school should have a librarian, a media specialist.
Yes, and that's already in COMAR. That's
Okay.
already, yes, that's already in there. What we're finding is, as you know, if you read the news, more and more LEAs are trying to replace their media specialists with paraprofessionals.
Yes, that's why I asked.
Yes, and that is a practice that's been going on for many, many years. There are many of our LEAs, small LEAs, that might have one media specialist for 10 schools. And so that media specialist goes around to each school, maybe sees the students once every 2 weeks. But then there's a paraprofessional who helps check the books in and out. So that's already in COMAR. That's a practice that's been happening. And I just wanted to emphasize the need for a certified librarian for instruction, because we are teachers and we do instruction, and our students are really missing out on that instruction.
Agreed, and I appreciate your emphasis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions from other committee members? Okay. Seeing none, we are requesting permission to publish these regulations, or for us to recommend permission to publish. So I'll take a motion from the committee to recommend. No one's moving. Dr. Lewis is moving. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Paul. All in favor of recommending permission to publish to the broader board, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Dr. Goldson. Mr. Paul, I just saw that your hand is up. I apologize that I missed that. Did you have a question?
No, that was a vote.
Oh, it was a vote. Got it. Okay. The three of us, I don't have Dr. Goldson on, but the three of us do recommend, so we'll move that recommendation forward. And then we'll move on to our next item. Thank you very much. COMAR 13A.07.01. These are induction regulations, and this is coming from Kelly Meadows. Ms. Meadows?
Good afternoon. Thank you. So before you today, we are requesting that you republish COMAR 13A 0701 Comprehensive Teacher Induction Programs. We did come first in January with these regulations. And just as a brief reminder, these regulations were last updated in 2011. We had a statewide work group that made recommendations that drove the amendments that we discussed in January. The state board did grant permission to publish. They were published in the Maryland Register in May. And we did receive 5 submissions of public comment. Based on those 5 submissions, and there were some themes there, we are recommending substantive changes. And so therefore we are asking that you republish to the Maryland Register and allow another round of public comment. Essentially, this is restarting the promulgation process because we're making substantive changes. As a reminder, what's written in the amendments is that LEAs need to come into alignment with these regulations if adopted by July 1st, 2027, which is in alignment with the Accountability and Implementation Board's comprehensive plan regarding induction programs. So we do have a little bit of time, and we are recommending that because we have that time, we make the substantive changes now in the process. So with that being said, I'm turning to the regulations themselves. I believe you have a clean copy as well as a redlined copy. I think it's easiest to see what we've done here by looking at the redlined copy. So if we turn to those, starting on page 2, which is part of the general or the programmatic requirements, in 04. If you look down to section G, you should see your first red text there. And what this is it is an addition to really call out some of the public comment we received was concerned that because we are requiring some standard professional development across the board, that the local control and customization would be lost. It's already called out with regard to what the inductees need to accomplish, but we wanted to make sure we call it out with the professional learning for school leaders, which is the section that we're looking at now. So we've added the text aligning induction supports with local school system initiatives and strategies. It's certainly not the intention to standardize induction across the state. It should absolutely be customized to each local school system. And so just calling that out to make sure that that's clear is the first change we are recommending. Moving to regulation 7. I'm sorry, I skipped one. Regulation 5, mentoring component of the comprehensive induction program on page 3. This is definitely the area in which we receive the most public comments. So we, in the current version of the regulations that were just published, it required 180 mentoring minutes per month if fiscally reasonable. What we heard from both our LEA employees and our public school superintendent association was that this is too prescriptive. It's not flexible enough. There are months that only have 13 school days. This could really put a burden on both the mentor and the mentee. We agree that we could be more flexible. So we are recommending changing this to 400 minutes of mentoring per marking period to give some more flexibility there. We've actually gone a step further, and we are recommending the language that you see underneath F, which is a gradual release or reduction of mentoring minutes if and only if both the LEA and the mentee agree that that's appropriate. So if they agree it's appropriate at the end of the first year, they could potentially reduce those 400 minutes per marking period to 300. And then at the end of the second year, again, if agreed upon by both parties, they may reduce the number of mentoring minutes per marking period to 200. So that is new language, and that really does address the bulk of the comments that we received.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Dr. Lewis?
Where does it say if the mentee and the mentor agree?
Sure. So F1,
I'm there.
a local school system and new teacher may mutually agree to a reduction in
Got it.
mentoring
Okay.
minutes.
Got it. I was looking for it in under number 2. Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, then I will entertain a motion to recommend to the board that we give permission to republish the induction regulations. So moved by
So
Dr.
moved.
Lewis. And a second,
Second right here.
Mr. Paul, thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. So we will recommend permission to republish to the broader board. Thank you very much. And Ms. Meadows, we're going to keep you on here for one more second for COMAR 13A 070603, incorporation by reference, and this is a permission to adopt. Please.
Absolutely, yes. So this particular set of regulations are an incorporation by reference for our educator preparation programs. These are the national and state standards by which those programs must align to be approved in Maryland. Because these standards are updated so frequently, we do anticipate coming back to the board each year to adjust these. For this particular year, you can see that there are several adjustments. We did put this out for public comment. It was published in the Register in April, May, and we did not receive any public comment. So at this point, we are asking the state board to recommend adoption.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to recommend permission to adopt to the broader board.
So moved.
Dr. Lewis.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Goldson. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Paul. Okay, that passes and we will recommend permission to adopt to the broader board. I know we went a little bit long today and we had a heavy agenda, but I think the work and the introduction to the ELA and math standards was really important discussion. And I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate all the staff who was able to be here this evening to present, give us information and answer questions. I appreciate your time very, very much. We look forward to our next meeting on July the 17th, where we will again be coming back with ELA and math and any changes that have been made with all the feedback that will be given in that time. So thank you everyone for your kind attention this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.